This video is about horror comics that were published by Marvel Comics' corporate sibling, Magazine Management. Specifically, 4 comic book series titles are presented. They all featured black and white interior pages with painted art covers in alphabetical order for each series and chronological order within each series. As the covers go by, information is provided, but is not intended to correspond with the specific cover being shown at that time. These comic books were classified as magazines rather than as comic books, and therefore were not subject to the comics industry's self-censorship Comics Code Authority. This enabled the use of stronger content, such as moderate profanity, partial nudity, and more graphic violence, versus the color comic books of that time. The 4 titles are as follows: Dracula Lives, Monsters Unleashed, Tales of the Zombie, and Vampire Tales. As a whole, they were published with cover dates from 1973 to 1975. This style of horror comics built upon similar comic books which had first started being published earlier by Warren Publishing. Cover artists, in alphabetical order, included Neil Adams, Ken Bald, Frank Bruner, Louis Dominguez, Stephen Fabian, Richard Hescox, Bob Larkin, Gray Morrow, Earl Norm, Jordi Penalva, Pugilar, Vicente Segreles, and Boris Vallejo. As to the history of horror comics, they started being published long before those shown in this video and continue to be published up to the present. Graphic portrayal of horror stories can be traced back to at least the 12th century and the Japanese scroll of Hungry Ghosts. Before comics, horror was featured in pulp magazines as the horror subgenre Weird Menace, which featured sadistic villains and graphic scenes of torture and brutality. Precursors to horror comics include detective and crime comics that had some horror in them, plus some superhero stories that included the likes of ghouls and vampires. Individual horror stories appeared as early as 1940. The first dedicated horror comic books appear to be Gilberton Publications' Classic Comics number 13 in 1943, with its full-length adaptation of Robert Louis Stevenson's Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Avon's Anthology Eerie number 1 in 1947, which was the first horror comic with original content. In the U.S. market, horror comic books reached a peak in the late 1940s through the mid-1950s, when concern over content and the imposition of the self-censorship Comics Code Authority contributed to the demise of many titles and the toning down of others. After this, from the mid-1960s to the early 1980s, horror comics flourished as black and white horror comic magazines, which did not fall under the code. In the 1970s, mainstream color comics experienced a resurgence in horror as the code loosened, and horror comics have continued on since then. A hostess of horror movies, Elvira, real name Cassandra Peterson, has even had many comic books published about her from 1986 up through the present. For information about the video, see the video description section. Please like and subscribe.